All right, let's see. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I need to shut this off. Hello?
Good morning. How are you guys?
How are you? Good morning. Hello, Morgan, Jesse. Right. So, how's everyone doing today, this week?
Not too bad.
Great.
I woke up this morning and I was like, I feel so much more tired than I feel like I should for this time. And I was like, oh, daylight savings time. But that's not it. That's tonight. But it feels much earlier for me.
Yeah.
I don't know how Morgan does it. 7 a.m.?
Yeah. Yeah, well, so that's great.
Morning.
Morning. Yeah. So I'm doing all right. What do you want to do today, Jesse? Do you have anything special?
Well, yeah. I think the thing that I am, I don't think that's Amanda writing, but like, I think submitting the abstracts for embodied workshop will be good, and going over that. As far as the general flow of things, there's a few things. Let's do this. So we have submissions. Do you want to go over like what things do we want to like discuss in the meeting today? Like bigger things, because I know we have your ghost paper that I've looked at.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you have more you want to say about, I imagine, your submission, Amanda? Or are you just like, let's turn it in?
I don't really have anything more to say. I guess if you guys don't have comments, I can finish it up and submit it soon. The deadline is the 15th, but it seems like even for that, they just want like a title. Like they don't need that much, but I still want to get like a solid abstract submitted.
Yeah.
So they know what we're talking about, because it seems maybe different from all the other submissions in terms of being more philosophy. So I guess I'll submit that at the end of the day. If anyone wants to leave more comments.
I saw your Chomsky piece and the things you want to discuss.
Oh yeah, I was just wondering if anyone else had read that. We don't have to discuss that.
I'd like to discuss it, but I can't get into the New York Times site.
Oh, I can try to share it. So what I do is I load the page and then try to stop it before the pop-up paywall comes up. So you just got to refresh it and then stop your browser before they realize what you're doing.
I was thinking about like print services too. Like you can sometimes just like print.
Oh yeah, print's great. Yeah.
Not like physically print it necessarily, but like bring it to things that remove ads.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's try to do that. So I think we'll just do a classic like old business first, new business second, and just go through it that way. Because there's a lot of I didn't quite get to set up this like meeting file yet, but all right, let me join with my magic screen power. But in general, like while I'm doing that, any updates people want to say? How are you? How was your week? Anything on a generic level? Oh, let me turn this off. It's really loud.
Looks like Raj has joined us. Thank you. Yeah, he's on a train. Okay, that's fine. Thanks. Here's the screen.
I'm going to try to do the whole enchilada today.
Okay. So, Raj has an update. Oh, I can just talk about it real quick. He put it in the chat. He was trying to connect NetLogo with Python. For this, I use the officially prescribed PyNetLogo library, but that supports only NetLogo versions 5.1.5.2.6.0. My M1 Mac can only run NetLogo 6.3, so I tried to configure the lower versions on my device, but couldn't do it. Tried virtualizing it in a Google Colab environment, but it didn't work. I raised this concern in the PyNetLogo forums too. Fortunately, there was a pull request that was merged yesterday in PyNetLogo's official repository that extends support for 6.3. This is for Mac. I faced a few errors with those and resolved it all but one. I've raised that as an issue in their repository. Before the next meeting, I'll get this job done. That's great. Yeah, thank you for getting that all set up. I think that's part of that experience, of open source is sometimes it doesn't work great. Sometimes you have to like figure out a solution, but yeah, that's good. I also plan on drafting my proposal by tomorrow, so I wanted to request Bradley, Jesse, and Brian for your email so I can give access to the Google Doc. Also, if there's any template for the proposal or some previous student proposal you can provide, that would be of great help. Yeah, I can provide that proposal, an example of it. I'll give you my email. This is just my email that people usually send things to for the lab, and then I can get access to that, or you can give me access to that. So yeah, thanks for that update, Raj. That's great. Looks like Jesse's set up here with his screen share, and he's got the false promise at ChatGPT article up. So
that'll be kind of a later thing we get to, because I'm not going to dive into that right now, but just to kind of have this set up. It's a nice thank you for the update. That's important work in that sense. Okay. Send an email to Bradley there. I may put my email in there too. My general quick take on things for this week has been you can kind of see it here, I suppose, actually. But I've done some tinkering with moving towards a potentially new structure for how to push some of the projects forward, and not in a sense of we're really going to do anything differently, but I kind of wanted to have a record of sort of my thoughts and collections about the education banner stuff. And so I think I'll just put it here. This will kind of be the first thing I talk about here. Yeah. I've gone through kind of, I guess, education banner, and I'll get to that in a second. Like I'm thinking about how do we organize the banners? How do we do kind of show iterative progress in some of the banner domains, and particularly because one thing we're coming up with in Plot Twisters and other groups that I'm in is like, how do we document some of the developmental work when people aren't present? And I feel like there's stuff I want to do there in that capacity. So that's going to be something I go into, and I'll just do that right away in the old business section. As far as other things go, we had a really nice Kanishkan Futures meeting this week. It was a really nice blend of just to kind of quickly show our notes here. It was a nice blend of thinking about project development and kind of hashing out some of Amanda's methods project, or Amanda's submission to the Embodiment Intelligent workshop. But it was as much as about that as it was about the methods project itself and where we're going with that. And kind of slowly beginning to separate out a bit more of closing the Fuchs era, writing a report on the Fuchs book itself, and then writing kind of a state of the project as something that we want to do to kind of capture this kind of formative first 2 seasons of the project. And we'll cover a lot of this later, but there's been a lot of interesting work in this area in that we're kind of, I don't have a good place to say this, but one of the things that we're doing, or conclusions, is, I don't know if I wrote it down anywhere down here, but basically kind of getting the methods project itself to almost be in a bigger, broader chapter structure. And like the first chapter, the first book was, the Varela book, and then we're kind of on the second book here, but this is sort of like captures an era of the efforts, and sort of we're kind of getting to the place of, okay, what is the end of that going to look like, and how do we differentiate that going forward? And seeing, okay, this first era has kind of been a bit like an introduction towards like Fuchs to Varela, and that's captured quite nicely in Amanda's submission, in her abstract, in the work in that space. But what's ahead maybe more, but there's sort of different segments ahead that could be like developmental focused, and I think we're kind of leaning back towards that direction a little bit, including with the Ghost in the Machine submission, some of the work there around the A-Life stuff. So it's kind of like a potential turn that way, and it probably isn't the most informative way to see it in this way, but just kind of says we've had a pretty good progress in Condition Futures. which is nice. So that's something that happened this week. There has been I kind of introduced someone new to the lab, Jen, and she's working a bit in I don't know if it's here. But Jen's sort of a public health person, but she's really interested in DEI, and we're talking a lot about ethics boards and DEI boards and things like that. And so we've had some meetings about what to do with NICWIC, which will be kind of a smaller thing. Like she's going to be, and I do want to talk a bit more about that, as in that deadline's coming soon, but it's not the most immediate one. I think like after this week, that will basically be what I really center a lot of my discussions. But we've had a pretty good amount of progress in terms of building this out. We have Ankit's work, we have Brian's stuff, Farley's stuff, and it's not quite the most fleshed out here. Oh yeah, Ankit's done some of this here, so thank you for that, Ankit. I don't have the immediate notes to Jen stuff, but there's been progress both on NICWIC 2023 and in specific and at large. Do I have it? No. I'll put it this way. After, just as a bit of a tease, but after NICWIC, I've been talking to Jen. We had another longer conversation last night actually about this. I've been talking to Jen about building out kind of a project that sort of catalogs or looks at basically in really simple terms, case studies of what has happened. In certain groups, like a case study of the Google Ethics Review Board, a case study of what's happened at some of our home institutions, a case study of what's happened. Jen has already actually interviewed a couple people through her own unrelated efforts, but kind of getting to talking to people and getting some feedback about this space. And I think the macro takeaway that fits under the SET banner is like, what's kind of like rubbing, what's the areas of tension against what these groups are doing, and kind of, is it, I drew a diagram. I don't know if I can easily show it. I probably can't right now, but I drew a diagram. For those who are kind of familiar with everything we talk about, I drew a diagram that says like, top level like executive and bottom level functioning, and then DEI as like version A of the diagram is like DEI is sort of like a discrete, almost inert, not interacting chunk in the overall layout and flow of the organization, versus ethics board or DEI as heavily involved in like regulation and feedback, and it's like an integrated piece of how information is flowing in that setting. And it's kind of like a, is it in the loop of feedback and regulation and consideration, process and power dynamics and stuff like that. This is a fun future project that will be maybe a bit in a very socially sciences way, potentially, or at least just getting a catalog of case studies, as I kind of said. But just kind of centering that. I don't have a lot to say about that yet, but like that's kind of a future post April project that's in the development area under the SET banner. Let's see, church about condition futures. I'm going to deeper dive into education banner next. There hasn't been a lot of movement on the front yet, but Bradley, I continue to think in relation to kind of this. I'll just go here next, but like the Dev AI stuff plus we're still kind of playing this out, and I think part of why I jumped into this, which I'll go into this education banner discussion next, and I'm trying to kind of move quickly through this because I know we have a lot to cover today. But part of why I'm focusing on this is because I think it will help out kind of almost like by elimination. If we establish a little more what this is, I think it will help curb this and also kind of fit out in the, oops. Oh, that's funny. Oh, anyway, it will kind of bring some clarity to the overall structure of the lab. A longer term goal that I have, and I'll get to it here. This is kind of recapping some of the Slack discussion about the demo or die stuff, which is inspiration. And even like this comment about, I want to put together something on research and project management and asynchronous distributed stuff at a virtual angle, kind of like an event, or like getting, like, I want to like host a discussion. I think about the Philosopher's Web cafe we did with Charlotte a while back. And just like having this sort of discussion or moderation, even if it's just me and Bradley literally talking and having like an audience, or even not, like we kind of mentioned, I feel like this is a great time to do that because there's so much working in that space. And to that end, this is mostly visible. Is this? Yeah, okay. To that end, like, I set up a specific task board for under the ed banner. Like, I do really want to get to a place where we kind of know what to call it, because we don't really know what to talk about it. Actually, as an aside, I went to this in much more depth than I will today and recorded myself going through this. And I kind of wanted, I think for some of like the developmental work of these banners, even if it's just me or potentially Bradley or whoever like contributes to some of the development of these, like the banners or some of the admin work, I think just recording yourself talking about it as you go through your notes or a document or a structure you're planning at like a project management level might be really good to do, just so you can capture the loose ends. Like I made a simple task board, and that's basically part of the, just to kind of show it, it's really just a view here. Like I made an education view of this, and I put up some of the task board just so anything within this banner that we have to do is there. Like this is something that I want to write out, but as we kind of can see, like there's sort of reach goals of an academic paper and easier goals of like blogs and recorded discussions about it. And there's a lot I want to do in that space for this. But overall, for the education banner, I feel like let's get a name. Let's get some simple words, and a lot of the work is just making the words and putting them out on paper. Let's list the efforts. We've done so much in the past that like we don't, like the CSV conference we've done, epistemological directories or discussions on that. There's a lot of things in the past that aren't really explicitly made, and I feel like, boy, we really like should do that justice. And in part, I want to flesh this out because I really value this, and I'm actually writing and working more in this space overall, and I want to make it I want to, like, if you go to, you know, very simply put, like something like these are kind of established banners that we have now. We have condition features, so we have this sort of very simple portfolio looking thing. We have it for society ethics tech. We have it for some other things too, even an internship program, which is basically under the educational banner. But like I want to have something similar to this just to kind of show it off, and also to kind of help facilitate coming in to working on it, and really centering it, but more than it has been. So I know this isn't exactly the most pressing thing right now, but I feel like at an administrative level, putting work in here will help facilitate a lot of other things we want to do. And like I said, like I want to basically I would love to get to a place where like the lab is kind of a little bit more of a hub of like, hey, we're doing stuff in this area and like we're hosting discussions in these areas. And that I don't think I've considered the idea of like making a podcast for myself in different ways. And I don't think that's really where I want to go with this. But having some established, like maybe quarterly we have some discussion about this, I think would be really quite relevant. And especially right now, I'm so inundated with all this stuff that it's just like, it's like I'm dripping these twirly bird moments, which is a major throwback that nobody probably would get, but barely. But like all these things around me are like, oh, this is something I could distill or make concrete into some artifact or some discussion. And it's like, how do we keep doing that? And this is related to this discussion, just to kind of show this, like how do we go from last year with update with this, and some of the comments here and moving this forward. Like this is all part of our discussion that's kind of happening in a somewhat nice way. This is happening underneath this, the spring update. I didn't put it here yet necessarily, but this is where that discussion is happening. So to that end, I'll come back to this, but basically that's the last thing I'll say is like, yeah, like I kind of think deeper and demo dyes are nice centerpiece concept that a lot of good things will come from in the future under this banner. And a little bit of a note to reach out to myself about Michelle Mora, who's an instrumental figure in like U Albany School of Education work on this project, at least for me a few years ago, because I think we already have sort of like partnerships about this that haven't actually been activated. There's the internship program, yes, but there's also like a lot of things in the work in this area that really haven't been centered or made explicit to anybody. And so I really want to focus on that ahead. So that's all I'm going to say about that. There's a lot there. I know it might seem kind of out of the blue, but I think there's something there we really want to center ahead. Any questions or comments about that before we move on to other stuff?
No, I think that we should probably have like a quarterly discussion soon on some of this. I think we do this not like on a scheduled basis, but on a regular basis we'll have like administrative meetings. We haven't had one in a while, but that's because we just get involved in everything. So I would try to schedule something soon. We should talk about some of these things, work them out. We've been kind of bogged down in a lot of submissions, so
right,
when that's out of the way, yeah,
exactly, and that's why like I don't want to take any more time. There's so much to talk about this, even if it's just Bradley or like people who are like in or want to be more involved in the lab admin. Like some folks have been here around a bunch of ideas. We do have like a discussion channel about that, but yeah, that's kind of a good point. I'll do it like this for myself. I think that's good, and I think also the way I see it, to kind of go back to actually, where is it? Yeah, here we go. That's what I wanted to do. Just to kind of go back to that specifically for a moment, sort of our front page here.
Yeah.
This is kind of where we're at. Like I think we're kind of in the midpoint of, I guess, like spring semester, if you will. We're going to be focusing on this quite a bit ahead. I'll just say this quickly. We're all set for this, and I forget when this actually is. The event itself is in May, so like this is this is basically, we've done everything we need to do for this. The resolution was plot twisters is, I talked to Jenny and plot twisters folks, like, we're not going to do anything plot twisters wise for this. So it'll basically just be this one. It'll basically just be the auditing tool and like open source engagement. That will be a kind of a flash talk there. We can work on that in April and May.
Yeah.
So this is good, but this is like not a priority right now. Still waiting to hear back about this. We're doing this today. This will start a little bit. And then this is ongoing. So it's kind of like we're basically at the end of, well, we're deep in the middle of a push for these submissions at a macro level for the lab.
Yeah.
Google Summer Code is about to end in terms of its not official period, and going to start into its official period. And now a lot of you know, this is the season and a lot of folks are coming through. They're like, oh, hey, come into the lab. I want to talk to Bradley. I want to talk to this project. Thank you for that, everybody. We get a lot of interest. We're meeting when we can with folks. I didn't even put that on the list, but
I need to update that project management tab for a minute. Could you go back?
yeah.
Yeah, so there's Bika, it's coming up, and I'm going to just submit something that I've been working on for that, but that's due on the, I think well, I'll just put March 20th as the deadline for submissions. Yeah, and that's there.
So I guess you've been working on that for...
Well, it's just something that's almost ready to go. It just needs to be worked out. But that's, they usually have like a presentation that they have. So I mean, I can get that ready to go for people to review soon. But I'm finishing up the A-Life stuff, so I don't really have time right now. But after that's done, then we'll move to the Bika thing.
Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna do both of these. Okay, cool. That's good. So NICWIC is still happening. Yep, all this other stuff. Anything else? Anything on the horizon? I put Society for Neuroscience here, but this is like way off in the future. Any other like events people want to mention going up? I know there's a whole there's like all the summer. I'm gonna yeah. I had a bit of a throwback moment to iClear or ICLR, how people want to say it.
iClear, yeah.
With someone I'm probably like low-key fanboy of, Judy Fan at UCSD and Stanford in the future also. But that was fun. But that's coming. I think those are usually summer. This is like April, July, June stuff. So that's probably happening. Any conference or events you want to just note or center, we'll say it now.
Okay. Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah. I'll put that. I'll put this here. What were we just talking about?
Yeah, Bika.
Cool. So moving along swiftly as much as possible. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Please. Yeah, you get this.
Yeah.
It kind of would be ideal to batch them because we have a lot of these standing requests about whatever. So some really good times for us typically are Friday, 11 to 2 p.m. Eastern time. Or like, it seems like weekday, midday in general. Is that what you say, Brian?
Yeah. It depends on the day, but we can set something up.
And obviously, like, it's not going to be like, oh, everybody's going to be able to meet Friday at noon. Like, that would be ideal, but like that's not going to happen.
Well,
But just kind of say, like, if you are looking to, if you're here for Google Summer of Code specifically, and you want to talk to us, or you're looking at our meetings coming back, say, oh, what are they saying about Google Summer of Code? We have a wonderful discussion channel right here. Please post in here. Please tag us in here. You're more than welcome to do this. And we'll try to make the best time for you, because I know that's what a lot of people are kind of messaging us about and talking to us and say, hey, can we do this? It's like, yes. So cool. That's kind of the thing. I don't know. Is there anything you wanted to say about Google Summer of Code, Bradley, before we jump into discussing submissions and everything else today?
Yeah. Let me actually share my screen for a minute.
Okay.
So I talked to Vrushali this week about some of the things in the VR project.
Yeah.
And so that's as good to kind of think
about. Is your
about.
Screen sharing, or should I?
No, you have to share your screen, I think. Well, I mean, you don't have to, but I'll share. I don't know if I can do this.
I think I should just supersede it. But if it's not, let me know. I'll cancel it. Yeah.
Is that it? Okay, good. So that's, here we go. So, whoops. Maybe I don't want to do that.
Yeah, you can just go to the tab you want to share.
Okay, so this is if you go to neurostars.org, INCF has the project descriptions. So this is the first one, maintaining an open source sustainability project. This is, I've had a number of people ask about that. I think Raj has just talked about how he wants to do this project and setting up his environment. And this is a full-length project, so this is 350 hours. I think I talked to Vrushali about this too. I don't know if she's interested in it, but in any case, if you're interested in this project, this is the place to get sort of the write-up of it. You can leave comments here, but really the place to go is our Slack. If you get a Slack, you can, I don't know if I put a Launchpass link in here, but if you go to our website, you can get the Launchpass for the ORAL Slack, or the Orthogonal Research Slack. So this is the place to sort of find out about this project. It's a full-time project, meaning that it's like this 12-week period that you spend 40 hours a week on it. And you can extend the project, but that's not a typical thing. So this is a big time commitment relative to the other project. So this project, of course, is based on the work that we did last summer in GSoC and some of the work we did last fall. So it involves the sustainability auditing tool, which is basically a web interface where you can use models to evaluate your open source community. There's also a set of repositories, or there's a repository. I don't know if we have a link to it directly here, but it's where we have all of the models from last year. So just simply ask, if you can't find it, ask. It's on the ORL group GitHub. So if you ask for that link, you can go there and look at some of the models and look at the code. So these are all models written in NetLogo. So if you know NetLogo is a combination of Pascal and I don't remember exactly what the whole language is, but I think it's based on Pascal, actually. But you can go through the code and, you can choose what you want to do for this project. So you can either have something to do with the, making the models better, making the NetLogo models better. We also have implemented some of the NetLogo models in Colab notebooks. And I think one set of models are in collab notebooks, but not the others. So that might be something you might include. Then working on the sustainability auditing tool, that's a lot of web design and getting models to work in a web interface. And there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done. So what I would do if I were writing a proposal for this, I would figure out what exactly I want to do. It's a lot of maintenance. There may be new things to add, but you want to propose those things very clearly. What do you want to do this summer? And so that should help you, I think, write a good proposal. There always is this issue of scope. So, how much work is enough for the summer? And that's where, if we have what typically happens in GSoC or in a GSoC application, is you end up writing a proposal. So the proposal is usually like a 12-week period. And that 12-week period then is, you break it down into a week-by-week schedule. So you build a table in your proposal, usually at the end. And you'll have a 12-week work period, where each week you'll propose something new. So the first few weeks are the community period, where you interact with our community. And would be like things like joining this meeting, or joining some of our other meetings, or joining in our Slack, being active there, learning about the community. After that, then you work with your code you work on your project, you work out different details. Ideally, you will have worked out a lot of the details, and this goes for the VR project too, worked out a lot of the details in the proposal period. So setting up, knowing that something will probably work, is where you want to get with that. So a lot of the proposals, they've had, in the past, the most successful proposals would kind of do a demo within the proposal. So there would be a description of the problem here. And then you'd have you'd frame your problem in terms of kind of implementing a toy version of it. And so we've had machine learning projects in the past where you might try a method, and then you put some screenshots in of performance, or something where you're segmenting images, or you're doing something. There's a result here, basically. It doesn't have to be a really significant result. It just needs to show the people evaluating the proposal that what you want to do works. In the case of this project, the VR project, you could show little animations that you've made, just to show that you can do something. Describe what you need to do to make it happen, the technical details. But you don't need to do a lot of implementation of the project. That will come in this 1 or 2 weeks after the community period. So you'll have this you'll have getting things, and you should really be doing this in the community period as well. So getting them in order, really start working on your project, and then in the subsequent weeks, you want to have little bits of work. So and we'll usually have weekly updates. So we'll have a separate meeting for GSoC. We'll have we'll have an update every week. What did you do this week? What do you want to do next week? And so that should follow roughly your schedule that you put in your proposal. So this might be this week I implemented a toolbox, and I worked with it, and I know it works. Next week I'll start building with the toolbox, and then the following week I'll finish up with that module, and I'll get it done. And then I'll move on to the next thing in my project. So this is something that these kind of tractable bites, weekly bites of tasks. It's kind of hard to get that down to exactly something that will be a week, but you have to think about it that way. And I can review your proposals and make sure that these are correctly sized bites, because I think by now I have enough experience with this. I know exactly how much you can get done in a week. So the other thing you want to do in your proposal, in this part of the proposal, is you want to have like alternate pathways. So if something doesn't work out the way you think it's supposed to work out, what's the alternative? What can you work on while you're solving the problem? Say like a toolbox won't install. We had an example earlier. Raj had mentioned that he couldn't find the right version of NetLogo for the Mac. Well, that's something that can be solved. It might take like 2 weeks, but if you have it as a week on your schedule, you're going to push that back. But there's something that you could work on in the meantime to get these things all, kind of timed out correctly. So that's your proposal schedule. And I will say that you can rescope your project schedules if need be, but we don't want to do that because it's kind of hard to kind of do that in the middle of a project. Just he put his email in there. So that's good. Then the other project is the virtual reality project for distributed research. This is the project. This is a shorter project. So this is a 20-hour project, 20 hours per week for 12 weeks. This is where you're using some VR program, Blender, Unity, whatever you want to use to build models. And so an approach that I've talked to Vrushali, I've talked to Hussein about this. I think the best way forward on this is to have maybe 2 or 3 projects that you want to do. They could be like experimental environments. They could be things that plug into like meeting spaces. There could be things that plug into, it could be something that plugs into Jitsi. It could be this open worm browser. If you look through this description, you'll see examples I throw around. I talk about 3D video, other things. Those are the output formats. So you want to do a project, you want to have an output format, and you want it to be like suitable for the thing that you're outputting. So if it's a visualization, 3D 360 video might be ideal. If it's like a biological model or environment that you navigate around, you might use a different thing. Like, you might use a MetaQuest file that you can open in a headset. Or you might use something you can open on a smartphone. I mean, there are all sorts of ways you can build these models. You might want to build models in multiple media formats. So that's the project. You can propose like 3 or 4 projects and prioritize them so that this will probably work. Then there's maybe another project that will maybe work, and other things that might take a while and so forth. We want to at least get something out of the summer, so we want to prioritize the thing that'll be most likely to work. The other thing is that in terms of schedule for this, it's hard to know how long something will take. A model might take 3 weeks to implement. It might take all summer. But if you have 2 or 3 options, maybe 4 options, it makes it easier to do this and, kind of get something out of the summer. Again, I would recommend practicing with your modeling skills before the coding period. Make sure you know how to use Blender or Unity or whatever you're going to use. And, in your proposal, give examples of things that you've built or, show how something might be built. Then related to this project, we also have a Discord server. So if you go to our website, which is a Weebly, let me type the URL in here. So that's the website, and if you go to our topical Discord servers under the education dropdown, you'll see principles of bits to matter to mind. And so this server actually I don't know if it'll be able to go. Oh, I guess it wants to invite me to do that, but okay. So I'm going to get okay. This is the server we do a lot of VR stuff here. We don't have a lot of activity on it right now, but I was just posting some things yesterday on virtual reality, different types of environments, This is a nice video on the ultimate potential of VR. That's something to look at. There are a number of topical channels here: virtual reality, network science, closed loop feedback. So we have these things that are involve like human augmentation, different types of systems level things that we are interested in with respect to VR. Neurobotics, which is like robots with a brain of some type, or biologically inspired robotics, and then virtual reality and towards XR. And then we have a set of methods channels, which are just things where we have different methods that we use. So this is something you'll want to check out if you're involved in this project. So this is there are a bunch of things in here that I've put. So yeah, this is just something where I hope we can get some conversations going on some things in VR, as well as people actually doing some model building and getting some of that work done. So that's all I have to say about GSoC. We'll be coming back to this on a regular basis, but I just wanted to get people started on some of these projects and their proposals, because the proposal period is starting to come up. Looks like Jesse's muted. Yeah.
I was saying some good stuff.
Oh.
No, I really wasn't this time. I was just gonna say I was gonna say open to the floor. Any people? Do folks have any questions about Google Summer Code stuff? Before I have one comment to make at an admin level, but anything people want to say before we go there? I'll let people say like a chat. My admin comment is basically going to be about setting up a place to host some discussion. Like if we have time before the 20th or like around the 20th or just after it, I'd like to meet with Bradley and potentially Brian and anybody who sort of, I guess a related question I'll ask is like, are we, typically, we've offered opportunities for folks who do not get accepted by Google necessarily to do their project to be in our cohort. Yeah. And I think that's the norm we're still sticking with, right, Bradley?
Yes, it is. And we'll set up a group later, for, I think both projects will be in the same kind of cohort, but we'll kind of cross between them. I just want to have like a time when we do open source and these different types of projects, but we don't usually do it in the winter because it's we don't have a lot of activity. So we'll start that up again. But yeah, if you're welcome to join our group if you don't get accepted. We don't really know. We don't have a lot of control over how many projects get funded. So, it may be like last year we actually got everyone who applied got in, which was very unusual. I don't know why, but that was great. And it was a great time. I think it was very productive. But if you don't get accepted, you can still work on things, and there may be ways to get credit for that in your home university, or build something that is some sort of work experience, or some sort of when you build something open source, you get this thing that you can make open source, so we can help you do that. So it's not just for there's no benefit to you for that. So
right. And with that in mind, well, just to kind of reiterate, I think that's such an important thing to iterate. That's how I literally came into the lab myself. I didn't get accepted into, and then we had only one. Well, no, I think it was actually 2 or 3 when I did it, and I didn't get accepted necessarily, or I didn't flesh out my project enough, or whatever it was. And I still joined, and I went to all the meetings, and I went to many of the meetings that was relevant for me, and I participated, and I turned it into a paper, turned into a publication. I worked with Stefan, and I think it was it Z and someone else?
And Ankit.
Ankit,
Gupta, yeah.
Gupta, who's not in the lab anymore. And that's how I came into the lab and became more formalized, was, okay, this is the path to do it. And that was 2019, 2020. So to to that end, that's always important to keep in mind. But I wanted to also say maybe we can set up a specific time to have like more discussion about this. Also, like I don't think he's in here yet, but we are talking with someone right now who we are like I'll put it here too. There we go. Whoops. But in New Albany, we are working with somebody, and I have to follow up on that. I apologize. The last couple of days, I have not done that. If you're watching, Michael, but we're working with someone to get them credit to go through the course. Basically, either hopefully they get accepted to the program, but I'm not trying to set up ahead of time something so they can get credit through their home department over the summer. And if that's an option for you, or something you'd like to explore, we would just request do as much of the legwork on your end at your home institution to set it up. Like, let us know who it is. At U Albany, I know what that is because I've been there. But if you have an experiential learning department, or ask your department about, oh, can I get experience doing XYZ? Like basically like through an internship, what does that process look like? And we can work that out. So that's a really cool thing to do. To that end, I kind of want to get Bradley to set up maybe something kind of like this for like we've had, if I go back far enough, won't show us. This is all only for this year. Yeah, you can kind of see like this is a banner from before that I made. Like we have some very old meetings of like Google Summer of Code related stuff here in the past. We're almost in that season again. So to go back to current semester, there's I think building out a little bit more structure to ahead of time on our end will be nice. Just for how I'm setting up things in Notion will be good. So maybe we can schedule a meeting in the near future. I don't know if you want to do that before the 20th or after the 20th, Bradley.
Probably after the 20th. But
yeah, because we're kind of bottlenecked heavily right now. But that'll be a good thing to do. So cool. Google Summer of Code discussion. Please use the Slack channel if you're interested in anything we've talked about, because there's a lot going on and many things are cooking right now.
Yeah.
To move ahead on that list of things cooking, let's talk about abstracts. I don't know if you want to talk about Amanda's first. Do you want to go with that, or like just embodiment or work conference?
I don't think I have anything to add about mine. I appreciated the discussion in Cognition Futures, and I think I just would want like comments on the draft I have on that in that Notion page. Just anytime today, I'll finish it up today and submit it tonight. So we don't have to go over it now, but I have I need a good like introduction. I appreciated in Cognition Futures the input on that, but I guess if someone wants to just like type up a few nice sentences, that would be helpful going off of those themes.
Yeah, and let's okay, Raj, thanks for showing up today. Yeah, and we're not going to do this now, but I want to say, just for people who are in the lab, like this is a really good example of, so how did this come about? This kind of came about through the Cognition Futures reading group, and we've kind of had a bunch of discussions about how to submit different things that we're doing in our research banner to this event. The conference. This happens to be the International Conference on Embodied Intelligence. Cool. And so just to kind of point out, like, we had an idea in the group, and then basically Amanda kind of spearheaded, because has a philosophy background, has done a lot of work in this area about how to kind of let's look at sort of the underpinnings of this from this angle. She spearheaded this idea, and we're turning it into a few things, at least a submission to this event is great. But then also we are we're collaborating on building out the abstract and the title together. And I want that I want people who are new to research to understand everything that Amanda just said is like, you can do that too. You don't have to be Amanda to do that. You don't have to be at any level that you're interested in building out projects. You can say, hey, I'm interested in this conference. Bradley or Jesse or whoever's leading the research banner or the broader group. Can we talk about this? I'd like to develop an outline of an abstract, an outline of a paper or a submission. And we can have discussion like that. And we can host it in Notion. We can go on a separate call like this and talk about things. And I feel like I kind of just wanted to center that because a lot of good things come out from those, both for the actual project and also for, this led into a great conversation about, for the actual submission, as I was saying, and then for the actual broader project itself, like we are finding ways to improve the broader project too. So those discussions can be useful for yourself and useful for the event and useful for the lab as a whole. So I really want to encourage people who are thinking about if they're finding a venue or a topic they want to put into a preprint or a conference submission or something like that. That's something that we can do. So I kind of just wanted to highlight that, add it in perspective. So yeah. Cool. So if you want to meet or have a discussion at some point today, Amanda, just to go over that, like I know asynchronous is fine, but also like I have to kind of schedule some stuff. So like if you want to pick a time that you're available, you can say it now or like just message me and go there if you want to do that.
What about like 4 p.m.?
Yeah, that's totally fine for me.
Okay.
One other thing I wanted to make explicitly, like what's really cool is that if you're an early career researcher who doesn't have a lot of experience in the field, because Bradley especially and myself, and also like Morgan has quite a lot of experience. I don't know, Morgan's still here too. Like some of the senior people in the lab, we really have the approach of, hey, we have experience in submitting, in writing, in being at events, hosting these hackathons, doing the things. We can help tailor it for you. And I feel like sometimes that's not necessarily made overtly explicit to new people in the lab, but like that's something that's understood as how we try to go about things. So teaching moment, case study aside, I'm looking forward to 4 p.m. Or whenever, like you can just message me in Slack. I'll be around most of today.
Okay.
And go from there. Cool. So that's Amanda's stuff. We have a few other things. I don't know if you wanted to talk about that, Bradley. I know there's stuff in the chat that I think has been kind of addressed.
Yeah, I think I don't have anything for the project management course this week. Why don't we move on to the ChatGPT discussion?
Yeah. Did you want to say anything about like A-Life or the ghost paper before we get into that?
Well, let me actually share my screen real quick. So there are a couple things that are new. They're kind of coming to a head here. I've been submitting things to Artificial Life 2023, so we have a couple of submissions. Ankit asked what topics have we discussed. So we discussed like.
I would look in the Notion document too.
Put the Notion link in there.
Oh, you did?
No, you did, but you can repost it because I don't think it comes up again.
It's also in.
Yeah, like I was looking at the Notion document today. So like, have we discussed about the earlier topics and is it like sequential or
are we
discussing random order?
I mean, it's relatively sequential. Like we're currently at we just finished. We just finished sort of the old business section. Well, I'll show you. So basically, we've been going. This is sort of, I have a little table of contents here. We went through introductions. We did. I have done some work educational banner. We've done we've done Google Summer of Code discussion. We just did a little bit on one of our submissions. I guess we're not going to do project management course. The new business, we're basically right about here. We were going to talk about BICA. We're going to talk about the New York Times article. So it's kind of a live inflow document as always. But that's where you are now.
Yeah.
You are here.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So, thanks. Let's see. Let me share my screen. All right. So I was going to talk about some of the things that are coming out of the A-Life work that's going on this spring. So the first thing is this paper. It's largely me, and thank you, Jesse, for going over it. You're acknowledged in this, and our critical periods people have been acknowledged in this. But this is critical periods in developmental neurosimulation. This is based on the critical period stuff. So we have a Discord server for critical periods in computational critical periods in development. This is something we've been working on for a long time, kind of like assembling readings and having some discussions. This is sort of a first stab at this approach. This is mostly the computational work. So it kind of draws from the developmental neurosimulation. I talked about this last week, but this is now on the SciArchive. But it's also being submitted to A-Life, and the reason I put it on the SciArchive is because we like to preprint everything, but also because I need a link for the EI workshop. So this is going to the EI workshop as well. For the EI workshop, I would welcome people to participate in the presentation. I mean, it's just going to go over some of the stuff that's in the paper here, but we'll maybe have more collaborative opportunities for the talk. Yeah. So I mean, it will go through a lot of these figures, but also maybe some other issues in critical periods. So that's available on the SciArchive. The other paper is this open source community sustainability using agent-based models, and this is all the people from last summer's group that were involved in this. So I'm there, Hussein, Amanchu, Brian, and Jesse. We all contributed to this write-up in some way. This is basically like the 3 models that we did from last year's Google Summer of Code. I put those in an order that was basically describing like open source community sustainability from different perspectives. There's a write-up around it about community measurement. So there's actually been some work done on this where people have looked at building community management resources and quantifying that. And then we talk about some of our models. We have a table with some of the parameters and their default values, and then we have links to the software. So these are like the different platforms. There's the reinforcement learning, there's the active inference, and then there's also the personality. And so these are all models that have been implemented in NetLogo. And then there's some discussion about good regulation and ethical regulation. Something we didn't get to last summer, but we got. It was characterized here. So there's probably more work to do on that. But this is a nice technical paper. This is being submitted to a workshop on agent-based models at A-Life. And then I don't know if I have it up, but there's this paper that Jesse and I are working on it's this idea of the ghost in the machine, which is the theme of the workshop or the theme of the conference. And it's just an extended abstract with, a discussion about, well, we talked about it in the Cognition Futures group. So basically it's this idea of, if we want to think about, here you go. Jesse's got it up. So this is, the plausibility of different outcomes in development, using development as a way to look at like embodiment. So you're looking at like embryonic development and then the consequences of that on embodiment. And so there are different scenarios. Like there's the, if say, for example, if the brain came before the body, or if the brain dominated an organism's phenotype and the body was secondary, or if the gut came, well before the brain, the body came well before the brain, and then the brain came well before the gut. And there are all these things. The gut is important because it's an early precursor in development, but also because the gut is like a mini brain that processes, emotional information. It processes metabolic information. So there are all these things that it does that are complementary to the brain. And so we consider those scenarios. Some of them actually resemble real organisms, some don't. But this is a life, right? This is a consideration of this. So it kind of goes through, it's very developmental biology oriented in some of the evidence that we draw from, but we're kind of pulling together development in the 4 E's, which is embodiment, embeddedness, and activism, and extended cognition. So we're kind of, trying to set the framework for that. And this is a very short piece of work on this, but I know Jesse wants to make some comments on it. It's open for comments. It's in, I don't know what channel it's in on Slack. I think it's in one of the Cognition Futures channels, but yeah. So that's all we have for that. I just wanted to point that out before we move on to the ChatGPT discussion.
Yeah. Yep. I'm still going through some of the different things, like both of the A-Life submissions or whatever. This is good. I think we're set also for. I think we are done with. We have four? Do we have four different things for the embodiment conference? We have Amanda's. Did you do critical periods for this too? Oh yeah.
Yeah, critical periods was in this as well. So it's just a double dip, but
right. Okay. I did one for the methods thing. I think that's it that we have. Did you do another one for this, or was this?
No, that's it. I think Hussein said he might, but I don't think it was a high priority. I don't think it happened.
Yeah. Okay. And then for this one, we have
critical periods.
A ghost. Okay.
Ghost.
All right. Great.
What was the methods one for?
Just the overview of the methods project. I forget what I it's kind of like, hey, we're doing this project, and
Okay.
It's more of a broad like discussion about what we're at, and maybe kind of some prompts about what, like, kind of getting feedback from them. It's kind of the goal of that one, but it's not. Yeah, I've submitted it, but it's not. I haven't like finished the full abstract of it yet.
So for A-Life, the third one is the open source sustainability. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, if you're doing that GSoC project, by the way, that should be. I'll put that paper in the Slack, and you should read that because that describes a lot of what's been going on in that project. So.
Okay. So people want to talk about, well, anything you want to say about Vika first?
No, I'm fine. I don't think there's much to say about it right now, but.
Okay. Great. So I guess I'll turn the floor over to people who want to talk about ChatGPT and or the article or what. Oh, Ankit, while you're here, one thing that like, it might be good to kind of meet up soon to talk a bit about NICWIC, because we are moving forward with that, and I know we kind of have your stuff with that, which may tie into the ChatGPT discussion we're about to have. But we're kind of in a deadline crunch right now until the next week or two. But then after that, after that will be like full speed ahead on NICWIC stuff. So just to kind of put that on everyone's radar. But yeah, I don't know if folks want to.
Yeah. Even I wanted to discuss a little bit regarding the liquid thing.
Yeah.
So currently, like I've made like a rough, like a starting. I would say it's a good starting point, but I think I'll send you the slides over for like reviewing, and then maybe you can just let me know like whether like what else I could add probably,
Yeah.
or like if it's
Sounds
including that chat GPT part. I think that's.
Sounds great. I've started putting together like a macro presentation, like slide deck basically, but there's no real content in it. It's just kind of starting to map things out slowly. So whatever you have, or whenever you want to talk about what you have, let's go ahead and do that.
So we had 2 articles. I know that Ankit posted something on using ChatGPT for reading research papers, and we can get to that as a second thing. But this is the first one. This is the false promise of ChatGPT. This is Noam Chomsky, and he wrote a guest essay, and it's been kind of making waves because some people think he misinterpreted the whole enterprise, but then other people, think it's fine. So I don't know. Let's talk about it.
So one quote that I think is kind of his thesis is that the deepest flaw is the absence of the most critical capacity of any intelligence to say not only what is the case, but what was the case and what will be the case. That's description and prediction, but also what is not the case and what could and could not be the case. Those are the ingredients of explanation, the mark of true intelligence. So this kind of like counterfactual reasoning to give like a causal explanation of something is what counts as thinking. So he says the crux of machine learning is description and prediction. It does not posit any causal mechanisms or physical laws. That seems to be the core of what he thinks is missing. And one thing that I thought was interesting is he gives these examples of like what ChatGPT would say in response to things. And some of them were just wrong. I saw screenshots of people asking ChatGPT like, what happens if I let go of the apple? And it answered, it would say like, any such object would fall because of the force of gravity. Like it would give that kind of explanation. And I don't think that disproves his point here. Like I think there is still something that he's onto, but the fact that the bot would actually respond that way I think that's interesting. Like he's saying that this machine wouldn't be able to do this type of reasoning. And I think that that's right, but the bot can fake it still. So that was one thing I thought was interesting. I'm still working through my thoughts on it.
I don't know if you want me to bring up anything on the screen because I don't know the article yet, so. That's a nice shoe, so.
Yeah, this is the thing that Judea Pearl is like known for, is the causal. He has books on causality in AI and in statistical models of causality and all that. And if you've been involved in neuromatch, you've probably gotten exposed to that at some level. This is just kind of the idea that you need to have causality and counterfactuals and things to verify what you're generating. Like an AI can generate something, and there's an issue with ChatGPT as to whether it's true or not. So, it's trained on the internet. You ask it a question, it generates something. Yeah, he loves his belief nuts. Chomsky's definitely fixed in a certain point in time, I think, in a lot of ways. Like, that's what people were saying. But I think, so it's like, sometimes what's generated is basically true, and sometimes it's not. There's no way to evaluate it independently. Like, if if it generates something it can't verify itself and say, should I put this out into the world? Like, some people don't have that ability apparently, but others do, and most people do. And so, if you say, like, you have something that's clearly wrong, you can fact check yourself, or you can think, maybe I shouldn't say that. And so that's something that we have as humans, as intelligent minds, that is verifiable. But of course, humans don't even really have a mastery of causality. We come up with causal relationship or thing. We put together things that maybe aren't causal. So, we make associations, we make spurious associations in our minds, and we make them into these stories that are, not necessarily the case if you were to test them in the real world. And that's, I think maybe, that's a point that we don't really think about. Like, we assume that human cognition is like error free, and it's not. Yeah. So I don't know. Does anyone else have any ideas? Manish or Ankit or Vrushali, Morgan?
Wait a second. Is Chomsky the person who invented this Chomsky hierarchy, this automata and everything?
Yes. Yes, he's a very famous linguist. Yeah.
Generative
I mean,
grammar.
but then, but GPT, Chat GPT uses Beam search, so you should be happy for that.
Yeah.
Because Beam actually uses this a finite automata. So
Yeah.
why is he so angry? I don't know why.
Well, there is this area of critique of these kind of models. It's just, I don't know either. Like, it's but it's interesting that, like, linguistics is, a field that it's part of cognitive science, and they have, their own kind of computational linguistics and everything that's kind of come up. And then, a lot of the AI stuff, it doesn't really have a lot of input from linguistics. It comes as a lot of input from computer science, but not necessarily linguistics. So I think, when you get these cognitive science oriented critiques of AI, it's kind of interesting, some of the state of the art and say like linguistics, but maybe not so much the state of the art. They kind of, that's the problem. And there may be ideas about human language that they're asking, is this tool really kind of addressing these issues? So, I mean, this might end up being a tool when researchers start to engage with these tools. They might end up going in different directions, depending on what field the researcher's in. I have been reading some things. People are like, well, this is something that, you could use as a tool for cognitive science research. Once the cognitive scientists start to do experiments with Chat GPT or some of these other models, you'll start to see some really interesting research questions emerge as to, like, what is it actually doing? Maybe how do we improve upon the model a bit so that it's maybe more about what we know about cognition. So yeah, there are a lot of interesting questions around that. But as to, like, the different types of models that are used, and there's yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
The idea of using, like, exploring the output of these bots as like kind of a form of cognitive science research is interesting, but it would be necessary to, like, for there to be transparency regarding like the top-down constraints put on these models. Like, you can't make the bot say something racist. Well, that's not because it wouldn't predict racist things from, all of the data it was fed. It's because there was some kind of constraint put on it, so that users can't, like, get it to say certain things. So I wonder what, like, you'd have to take that into account. And I don't know if there's any transparency about, like, what constraints. I guess there are other versions of it that were not given those constraints. Like, can't you make the Bing one, like, won't that one just, like, say anything? So I guess there's variety, but you would have to know in addition to, like, the algorithms, you'd have to know the limitations placed on it.
So I haven't really read the article, and I've been like, I had to handle some things even during the discussion, so I'm quite naive to all of this, but I find this, and by I mean like this exchange with this, particularly this, why can AI not have a personal perspective? And this feedback that's like, as an AI, I am. Like, I don't know. I feel like something feels very off to me about this, in the sense of when people act like, and maybe this reflects my own perspectives, but this, as an AI, I am remark, and sort of treating it like you're talking to an entity, feels very, there was a really I think I might have retweeted it, which is like, maybe Twitter will save me. Maybe this will explain what I feel about this. Here, like this is maybe an interesting discussion to branch off into. Like, do you believe in functionalism about consciousness? This is a Johan John thing. Where's the one that I was looking for? Yeah, we've learned to make machines that can mindlessly generate text, but we haven't learned how to stop imagining the mind behind it. Emily Bender of Semi-Stochastic Parrots fame, and with Timothy Brew and Margaret Mitchell. I didn't read this article significantly, I just saw a discussion about it on Twitter. But I feel like that kind of is the deal. Like, I feel like we're very clear, we're imagining, we are putting this isn't, you have to, like, I feel like you have to understand this response is not how, like, I think it's, well, put it this way, how much of the mind are you imagining behind that, and like when people are interpreting that? And I feel like that's something that there's no, it's basically, it feels very equivalent to like augury, or some really, and I'm not even, I'm gonna say, I don't even want to be like this, I don't want to I'm not dissing like primitive paganist beliefs. That's not actually what I'm getting at, but more like we're generating something that we can't measure right now, and attributing a mind behind it, or some are, and there's no way right now to really clarify. Well, I think there is, but like it's sort of like it's very like interpreting a painting, like how you're gonna say it's wrong, like I don't know if I'm saying this very well, but I feel like if Bradley's interested in beating the ghost out of the machine, what ghost are we like having the seance for and summoning into this machine? I guess is maybe a way to think about this. Like, what ghost are we hoping? What do we want to see in there? And it's sort of like, I almost feel like, actually, I think this is specifically a part of the paper that Bradley wrote.
Yeah.
Like considering how information processing in the brain might be more about structure and less about internal representations. Like a little bit of that energy in like, are we, what representations are we assuming here versus like what structure are we realizing? Okay, there's a structure of processing and development and output at play, and just because something in it has trained it to interpret. This isn't addressed at ChatGTP. Like, I think that's the fun thing here, is like, this is an AI.
Yeah.
And it says, as an AI, which I am, and using this first person language, like this is now, and I feel like people think, oh, it said itself, therefore it must mean, it's like, okay, like is it just Chinese room experience in a different flavor? It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm done.
So yeah, Ankit had a few things in the chat. He was saying that yeah, Chomsky loves his belief nets. Yeah, and then they gave labelers a set of rules based on their policies for the moderation. That was when we were talking about moderation and sort of transparency. And then he says it's all these linguists. So yeah, I think that's a good point though, Jesse, about the ghost and the machines. So you can see that ghost, kind of the outlines of it. I mean, there are a lot of ways you can define it, I guess. One is this idea that it's using a first person point of view. It's, it knows it's like, maybe it even knows it's not conscious, but it's like giving an answer that looks like something that we would ascribe consciousness to. And, we've done that with other, we anthropomorphize things all the time. We give them a human identity, like,
well,
right.
Yeah, I think, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but I feel like I want to interject saying people have to understand also that the self-referencing language is generative itself. It is not actually indicating that there's something there. And I'm not really even trying to take a hard stand on like, oh, AIs can never be sentiment or AIs are or will be. Like, I'm not even trying to, I don't, to me, that's not related to it. So honestly, I feel like on a personal level at this time, I feel like a lot of talk about ChatGPT is not useful for anyone. And what I mean by it is like, I mean like, it's sort of like, it's like people kind of squiggling in the sandbox and then fussing about how the wind blew it around and saying, well, this means this, and no, this means this, and having these hard takes. And it's like, I think it's useful, but also I feel like I would really be interested in discussion that sort of, what I think, and this is sort of like, what I think I would love to see, and this is a bit of a, I can't, I don't know if I can, I'll try to quickly show my whiteboards as a frame of reference. I'm not going to really, you can just see in the corner, I'm not going to make it big.
Yeah.
But like, on the whiteboards, they're basically, what I'm doing right now is like mapping out these to make the discussions about ChatGPT useful. I feel like, where is the framework delineating kind of some of the philosophical, like very methods project, what are the philosophical assumptions where this content is coming from? What is like, where are you placing the personhood? Like these kind of more explicit framework, because I feel like people are kind of just saying in these sort of, my feelings are, and bridging from that, I'm going to make a declarative assessment based on my stuff. And like, that's good, but I feel like so much of the discussion is, I don't know, wind blowing sand around in the sandbox and then interpreting that as, well, it definitively has to be XYZ, rather than looking at, and kind of why I'm very loosely gesturing towards the paper of like, well, where in the structure, where in the development of this are you commenting on? Are you commenting on, oh my God, I can't believe an auto-generative text, interpreted, oh, they're seeing an AI, and it's like, I'm an AI. Like, are you interpreting that at a output level of a thing, or are you interpreting that as, oh, it's talking that way, so it must be like, I feel like the discussion there is very, maybe I'll kind of defer to like Johan with comments like this, and I haven't fully digested what Johan said, but like, is it basically just kind of what's the Rorschach test? I can't remember the proper word.
Rorschach, yeah.
Rorschach test for how you're interpreting stuff here. Like, I don't know. How would people even respond to this if you want to continue this path? Like, well, what would you say to this, and why or why not? Like, is the consciousness whatever consciousness does from an external point of view? Is that almost like a consciousness Turing test then, or?
Yeah, I think the Turing test is a nice analogy. I also like that top comment that no, consciousness is the enactment of a life world, because I think that because I guess we kind of like know what that means from reading Fuchs,
right?
But I think that is, I think that is actually like really important. Like, there's a sense in which the Chat GPT is like all ghost and no machine. Like, it has no contact with the world, and
All ghost
has no like its world, I guess, is all of this linguistic input, but that's not a true environment. So yeah, like there's, and this goes back to what Chomsky's point about like counterfactual reasoning is, like and what Bradley said, like it can't verify, it can't like there's a sense in which it can generate predictions, but those predictions themselves are like not, there's just no contact with an environment. I also think it's interesting, it's interesting that Chomsky's a very interesting figure, but I think that a lot of people's reactions to the chatbots reveal like the impact of thinking about the mind, as the human mind, as though it's a digital computer. Like the fact that we're even like attributing intelligence and possibly mind to something like a bot. Like if there's the people who are taking that idea seriously must have some idea of the mind as a digital computer. And it's interesting that, I mean, I think Chomsky is one of the main people responsible for that metaphor, with his like generative grammar. That seems to me to be like an early step in the digitization of mind, digitalization of like how we think about the mind. And like Chomsky became famous and got the funding where cybernetics fell, like where Viner did not get the funding and was ostracized.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote jokingly the cognitivist here, and I feel like is that a fair thing to even write there, or am I just like BSing by saying the cognitivist? Because it's like, is it fair to say cognitivists are proponents of the mind as the computer or like the machine, or is that like too much to say here?
I think there's a lot of variety in the views, so I'd have to think more about what I mean by like the digitalization of thinking about the mind. But that's go ahead.
And this is as kind of why I'm saying that the side is like, even in certain cognitive science programs, like even at the UCSD grad school for cognitive science panel that I was at, like I'm so glad I got a little bit of exposure to that, because it had like the social psychologist, the developmental, the pure cognitive scientist, cognitive scientist, and like these different like branches that were pretty strongly represented in that panel. And it was like, oh, like really getting to see how like a fascinating layer to the methods project would be having like a macro tagging or like interpretation of how much embodiment or like I was gonna say hashtag Thomas Fuchs, but like how much is enactment interaction in like 4E or post or beyond or deeper than 4E are they actually doing? Because we talk about 4E like as this ubiquitous thing that everybody talks about in the same degree, but like I think that's totally not the case. Like you have people who don't really give a whatever expletive or non-expletive you want to say. People don't care. They don't give give a care at all about like certain parts of that, and like, well, that's great, but I want to push forward with this, and I'm gonna interpret or not interpret embodiment to mean a certain thing. I'm going to use XYZ to go forward, and I feel like that's as kind of an adjacent, semi-congruent to this. Like what assumptions are there, and like in Hough. Like, like there's a lot of interpretation there. So anyway, I don't want to steer this too much more. I'm curious what Ankit meant about Jesse gets it now what I meant the other day. What was the other day? What other day were you mentioning, Ankit?
I think I was referring about I was referring other day about Timnit Gebru and all these people. So so basically, like I was discussing with Jesse like the other day that most of the people who are in ethics, like Timnit Gebru or like the Joy Bloomy, all these, or like even let's say what's her name, Emily Bender, all of these people who are basically in ethics, like they are just doing moral policing of sorts, and like it's not that they're always right, but they are like, oh, we are right, and if you tell us we are wrong, then we will scream and shout and cry. That's like their attitude. That's how their attitude is like. That would basically so you were kind of talking in a similar context, like if you look at everyone who's against GPT-3, it's everyone who's like a linguist or in ethics or something. Like you have Emily Bender who's a linguist, we have Chomsky who's a linguist, and maybe some other linguist.
I don't really agree with that though. I think that's a little bit too broad. I feel like that's
feel like they feel a little bit too attached to like their like syntactic trees and all that stuff, because like if you have like at least once in your life, if you've like if you've tried using all those sides of like trees and all that, you will get some sort of emotional attachment with it. So I personally believe that like if you will definitely feel a little bit like frightened if they have something like GPT-3 that has like nothing like substantial to verify its claims.
That feels a little weird to me, because a lot of the critique about like, I feel like that's basically making a simplistic argument that people who are concerned about AI ethics don't understand how machine learning works and have no right to like fuss about it. I don't know if that's exactly what you mean or not, but I feel like I think I see merit in saying people who are not trying to discuss ChatGPT at the level of like functionally what's happening they can be very misguided in that. Like I agree with that, as like if we're not if we're not cognizant of like how it's being produced and what that entails for applying like agency to it, I think that's something to heavily. I think something that like all of the communities can do better at, and I feel like I think some, like Jan LeCun is actually doing a decent job at trying to say like I think a relevant debate for this discussion would be like the criticism that Jan LeCun had for releasing, like they released that thing, I forget which one it was. Was it they released
Galactica
something?
Galactus.
Yeah. And then they were like, "Oh, too much stuff," and in the back, and people were like saying, "Oh, I think to try to speak to Ankit's argument, from what I understand it, is like there was a lot of weird ethical feedback from that. Like, how could you release this product without knowing it could be used problematically?" And Jan was like, "Well, this is a demo that we are exploring, and like we're at a very early stage, and it's like what are we supposed to do about it?" And it's like all then labeling stuff and everything else, and it's like I feel like I don't even know what to say about that entirely, in the sense of I guess I don't even, it's not that it doesn't matter to me, but I feel like investing too much. I think there are legitimate concerns in terms of like what are you releasing? Yes, but also like all I really see in this space is like there is so much work to do in this space about regulations and laws and arenas and like processes and like what stage should be there that I don't really feel like I even have a conclusion to make about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, Ankit said we could talk about this forever. But why don't we move on to the.
yeah.
I know Ankit had an article on using ChatGPT for research papers. This is something he wrote. Would you like to. I can share my screen, Ankit, if you would like. Or I don't know if Jesse has it up.
Yeah, sure, you could.
Okay, yeah. So why don't I share my screen here, and then we can talk about it. I don't know if Ankit wants to talk about it, and I can just go through it, or if that would work. So this is Ankit's article. He posted it on his Medium.
It's a draft.
Oh, the draft. Okay, well, let's talk about it a little bit. So this is he was using Lex AI, which we talked about in the meeting.
Can you like just skip to the last part actually?
All right. This part?
Yeah, this
right.
part. So actually, like I was writing this blog about how you can use ChatGPT for like reading research papers, but there is something that I kind of that came to my mind that 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 you can view ChatGPT as like an RNN, and so this is basically what I've described like over here. So I'm not sure like if anyone like how many people like know about RNNs first of all. So basically RNNs are like these recurrent kind of like architectures that were kind of used like before your transformers and stuff. So in RNNs, I remember there was this technique where the recurrence would be from the output. So each time there would be like an output, like as we can see of like O of t minus 1. So O of t minus 1 at the next time step, that gets combined with the input, and so that forms like a new hidden state for the next time step. So the output becomes the input, and that's a form of a recurrence. Now, if we scroll down,
Here.
so that above technique that I explained was called teacher forcing, and another form of the same technique is where we do not do this form of recurrence, and what instead we do is that let's say I input start, I get 2. Now I'm inputting 2, I'm getting birds. So what exactly we are doing in this form of like forcing is that we are just the sequence that we are giving as an input is like the ground truth or the label, and what we can now do is that we can compare our label with the previous output. So in this case, let's say I input start, I get something like 3. So I can compare 3 and 2, and that can like give us an estimation of like how good bad our RNN is learning. So in this case, like since we do not have recurrence like from the output, but it's rather recurrences from the hidden layer, we can use some form of back propagation. But if you like to scroll down again, okay, so now given the context about like RNNs and like we can use the outputs again at each time step, I was kind of thinking about like Chat GPT. Like when you're using Chat GPT, like the way it behaves, it's very similar to like how an RNN would probably be during training. Like I'm sure like some of you must have heard of like this. Some of you must have heard of the LSTMs and stuff, and and the main thing about RNNs and LSTMs is that they stored memory, and so I kind of sort of started thinking from that angle, that what if like chat GPT is like basically like we are just using like an RNN but at inference time. And like one of my main reasons was called like conceptualizing chat GPT while testing it as an RNN is because when we input anything like a prompt to chat GPT, it will give something from its own knowledge that it has been trained on, and that knowledge is basically some sort of memory, which is what which is exactly what RNNs have. So it's basically exactly the same like the concept. And here, so in this context, I'll explain how I feel like chat GPTs are very similar to RNNs when we're testing it. Is that when you give the initial prompt, you'll get some output prompt. Now, the next time you give it any prompt, usually you will refer to or mention some parts of the output. Like either you will be like, oh, the output is not right, some, or like you'll mention what does this thing in the output mean. So you're trying to get some sort of clarification from the bot. And now when you input it, usually you'll get some sort of like wrong result. This is what I've noticed. Like initially when you prompt anything, you're very likely to get like hallucinatory like responses. And the reason I feel for this hallucination is that obviously given that it has memory, it still does not know what exactly like it should like give as an answer, because it's like a general purpose trained bot. But one thing that I did notice is that like if you take the hallucinatory input and we like modify it with some like external like knowledge. For example, let's say like I'll give an example. Let's say you like ask chat gpt about like Noam Chomsky's view on chat gpt, for example. Okay, this is pretty meta. So maybe chat gpt will say something like, oh, Noam Chomsky is the president of United States and he thinks that chat gpt is the best thing ever. So now you will give another prompt to chat gpt, and like what you can do here is that you go to Wikipedia, maybe copy the first paragraph of Noam Chomsky and say, no, Noam Chomsky is this, give that description, which is the external knowledge, and then you can tell it to uh, revise its own response. So I've noticed that when you like take external knowledge, or like when let's say I paste the same essay by Noam Chomsky and I paste it like a small form, the more you keep on prompting it and keep on adding external knowledge, the responses of chat GPT keeps becoming like less and less hallucinatory, and it becomes a lot more with respect to the context you're trying to give. And and even in like humans, like for example, like people are having a discussion, right? My personal view of hallucination is that humans hallucinate as well. And a perfect example of hallucination would be like, let's say like maybe I go into an interview where some like research scientist from Facebook is trying to interview me on some complex math topic. Now but I'm forced to give an answer, so I will hallucinate some answer just for the sake of it. but but now if the interviewer is giving me some context that, okay, I'm talking to you with respect to linear algebra, with respect to this kind of subspace, then I'll be like okay, with from using my knowledge and using the context that you have provided, I can provide you like a less like non-hallucinatory input. So this is something like I found like in chat gpt that that's very like correlating with how like humans behave, and how it kind of correlates with like RNNs as well. So this is the thing. And I think then Schmidt Huber would probably again be proud
Yeah.
that someone came up with this diagram, and he can probably post about it like, oh yeah, chat GPTs are RNNs.
Yeah. This is great. This is a great article. I was looking at it. Yeah, okay, Jesse, you have to go soon, and yeah, thumbs up for that. Thank you. Did we have any comments on that, or?
It was really good. I want to read the whole thing so I can digest it. I'm kind of in transition shortly.
Yeah. Okay.
But no, that was good, and I think it would be even like I didn't get to read most of the article in the sense of like, like I think I don't know if the article says like making like explicitly saying why Schmidtbeer would like really would like this. I think like I kind of know why, but like I don't know if it says in the article this is why, like this is moving this in this direction, or like that. To me, that's like, yeah, like I think having commentary and making explicit a lot of all the things that the article's getting at, like, well, I think the article's good at making those things explicit, and I'm like, I think that's a really useful contribution. So I look forward to reading it, and I don't know if it's a draft state or whatever, but like I look forward to reading whenever it's ready. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a draft. If Ankit, if you want to publish that on the lab blog, that would be good. You can push it there as well. That'd be
Yeah, it's currently it's like very all
Yeah.
over the place. So I'll edit it and definitely I'll publish it.
okay. Sounds
But
great. Yeah.
in the meantime, like anyone like has any questions, please do not hesitate.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Is there like how could like I don't know if there's a link somewhere that people could look at it at, or is it just I don't know how to look at it basically. You could post a link somewhere, or whenever it's ready, we can just share the link and we'll look at it. So, okay.
I can, in the meantime, I can probably share the diagram. I think
Yeah.
that's
You can
Okay.
share it in the Slack, like in one. I don't know what channel, whatever channel you think is appropriate.
yeah. I'll probably share it in general, maybe.
You can do that. Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, that's all I can do for now. But
That's
I have
fine.
to like
Yeah.
edit it.
No, this is great.
Yeah.
So I've shared it in general right now. You can check it out.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyone else has any questions?
Yeah. Please ask Ankit. So yeah, it's great. I think that's been
Yeah.
it was a great discussion of ChatGPT from a number of perspectives here. So. Okay, so I'm going to finish up here. Let's see.
Last thing.
Oh, okay. Well, go ahead.
Just a question. Should I should I name this? Should I name the title as like Chat GPTs or RNNs?
Yeah. Well, I think it's something simple, but maybe your thoughts on it.
Maybe I'll just put it as Chat GPTs or RNNs.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
Schmidt Uber will take a look at it.
Yeah. I think in the title of the article, maybe add something about hallucination, because like when you get down to the bottom, it's not immediate. That seems like that's a pretty important thing that you're talking about, and it's not clear from the top that you're going to be getting to that point. So
Yeah, my initial editing pass is sort of like, I think even sometimes even like putting it as a question can be like, is Chat GTP RNNs, and like managing hallucinations in a way, like managing, you said something kind of salient, and I'm trying to put in the title, like managing hallucinations in a way that like, I don't know, human feedback would, like you had a nice way of like getting it like, oh, here's how, like what a human would do, or how to like correct hallucinations or something like that. I didn't fully get it, but like I think is Chat GTP RNN, and then like something about hallucinations like broadly or specifically, like probably said, would be a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically talking about like if I gave you a question, you have no idea what I was. When you do an exam and you get a question, you don't have any idea what it is. You didn't study, and you just write it out, and it's like like a the archetypical person who doesn't study, and they just kind of give a nonsense answer. That's what he's talking about, and then but with ChatGPT, you can give it like context. You can say this is something, prompt it with information that's relevant, and it can kind of piece together, because if you train it on the internet, it may or may not get the right information. You give it some context about the right information, and it might get closer to a better answer.
Yeah, and I think that's like a really interesting thing is like at what point it even goes like the humans in the loop stuff a little bit. Like what point is there interfacing with either a ground truth or I don't want to say moral authority, but like interfacing it with a reliable authority. Like where do those come into the pictures? I think is like a great maybe tangenting away from the main point, but yeah. Anyway, really great stuff. You wanted to talk about other things, Bradley?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so thanks for that presentation, Ankit. So the end of the meeting here, I want to get into some things. I was going to talk a little bit about the publish, review, and curate model, but I might save that for next week because this is something that's coming up in eLife, the journal eLife, where they're adopting this model. And we'll talk about that next week. But I did want to talk about, so I guess I'm sharing my screen still, okay? So I'll talk about this for the end of the meeting here. There have been there's a new paper on the Drosophila connectome this week, and they have the full connectome now. So this is actually, I think more than connectome, I think it's a lot of the synaptic connections have been characterized. So I'm going to talk about that, and I'm going to talk about some precursor papers. But this is a video of the Drosophila connectome kind of visualized. So I've seen this this was at Neuromatch at one point, I think, and some other conferences. This is the Drosophila brain. So these are the mushroom bodies. So insects have a little bit different brain than mammals, of course. We have a neocortex and, a brainstem and a midbrain and a cerebellum and other structures like that, a medial temporal lobe. Insects, of which Drosophila is one, they have these mushroom bodies here at the top. These are the left and the right, and then these connections that come down and they innervate different parts of the insect's body. The mushroom bodies are multisensory integration organs, so they integrate a lot of the visual information, a lot of the sensory motor information, and so forth. And so this again is the whole connectome visualized. You have the cells, you have the nerve connections going out, and this is Genelia. So Genelia Farm is one of the NIH research institutes. They've been doing a lot of work on this, building this model from microscopy images, from other types of imaging techniques, and so they've built this whole connectome. So that's what it looks like in the model. It's that's what the brain is. So actually, this is the paper that came out this week. This is the bioRxiv version, so it's been out for a while, but it came out in Science. I couldn't get access to the Science paper because they have this pernicious paywall. But this is the connectome of the insect brain. So they talk about it. Brains contain networks of interconnected neurons, so knowing the network architecture is essential for understanding brain function. We therefore map the synaptic resolution connectome, which means that they have it at the synaptic scale. We talked about synaptic, the value of thinking about synapses last time and the time before, so we've been continuing with this theme, talking about synapses and sort of the value of that in a connection machine or connectome. So they did this for the connectome of Drosophila. They did the larva, which is like a juvenile stage Drosophila, meaning it's not a mature fly, but it's in the developmental stage. So they're looking at the Drosophila larva. They're looking at the insect brain. They're looking at rich behavior. So they're looking at learning, value computation, and action selection. So Drosophila has all these behaviors. So you have a brain that's sort of, can do these sorts of things. So you're characterizing the synapses, which are the connections between the neurons. You're characterizing the neurons, you're characterizing the axons, and you're visualizing that so people can see it. So the Drosophila connectome has 313 neurons and 544,000 synapses. So I think we get a scale of the relationship between neurons and synapses. There are a lot more synapses than neurons. Each neuron, 2 neurons are connected through a host of different synapses. So do the math, you can figure out how many synapses roughly per neuron pair there are in the connectome of Drosophila. Now, for reference, we often talk about C. elegans connectome, and that has 302 neurons in the adult, and it has, I don't remember how many synapses have been characterized, more than 302, let's say. It's in the order of thousands, I think. So, synapses sometimes are established and disappear throughout development. So you have this synaptic pruning, for example, where you have, synapses that die off for various reasons. There's synaptic plasticity, which means that they become stronger or that they form sometimes in development or even in adulthood. So that number of synapses is kind of, fluctuates with respect to learning or with respect to maturity. But this is the order of magnitude that they're kind of getting at here with this model. So this is just a model of a number of Drosophila that they've imaged and put together the data for. Just to give us a rough estimate of what that connectome looks like. So in this work, they characterize neuron types, hubs, feed-forward and feedback pathways, and cross-hemisphere and brain-nerve cord interactions. So if we go back to our model here, we have, we have the nerve cord, the brain-nerve cord interactions. The nerve cord is this area here going down the body. The brain is here. They have, hubs, which are these neurons that are highly connected versus neurons that are less highly connected. So a lot of the neurons along the edge maybe are less highly connected, but there are some neurons in the middle of the brain maybe that are highly connected. And if you think about that in the network context, those are hubs, and the others are peripheral nodes. But they characterize all of these, and you can do this in C. elegans. You can do this in a host of other brains, where you can look at the connectivity and hub activity. Hub activity is usually neurons that control behaviors. They have this control aspect to them. So it's they've characterized all that. So we found pervasive multisensory and interhemispheric integration. So again, there's multisensory integration here coming from different senses. There's interhemisphere. So these are 2 hemispheres, the left and the right. There's communication between the 2 hemispheres. I don't know if you can see. If you look at the model, let me stop it where it comes into view. Here you can see that there are connections between the hemispheres up here where you get these cross connections. And that's important for lateral behavior, so that behavior is not totally lateralized to the left side or the right side. The left side knows what the right side's doing, basically. In the mammalian brain, we have the corpus callosum, which is a bundle of nerves that go across. They have a similar thing in insect brains. And so you have all these different circuit motifs that you can characterize, different types of neuronal connections and neurons. They're in the insect brain, there are different types of neurons that do specific tasks. So they can characterize all of that. The brain's most recurrent circuits comprise the input and output neurons of the learning center. So this is the learning center is in the mushroom body, I believe, and it is responsible for learning and memory, and their input and output neurons there that they've characterized. Some structural features, including multi-layer shortcuts and nested recurrent loops, resemble powerful machine learning architectures. So we're drawing this connection between a connectome like the insect connectome and a machine learning architecture. And I think this is really about this sort of idea of recurrence and recurrent feedback. It's not, saying that you can do machine learning in this connectome, but it's saying that they're, obviously they're, a lot of, connectionist thinking was inspired by brains. So that's obvious in some ways. But it's kind of an interesting point. The identified brain and architecture provides a basis for future experimental and theoretical studies of neural circuits. So we have this brain, we have this connectome. Here it is. This is the whole CNS volume. This kind of shows here where this is with respect to the anatomy of the fly. So you have the brain with its interneurons that connect different input and output neurons. You have sensory inputs. You have inputs in and out of the eye, in and out of the antennae, and other things. So it's sensing a number of different types of things in the environment. It's coming into the interneurons. Some of those integrate the information. Some of them relay it to other places. There are sensory inputs down in the rest of the body, and they're ascending relays up to the interneurons. So a lot of this gets integrated in the mushroom bodies and then gets passed down into other parts of the body responsible for locomotion or whatever. This is showing the brain inputs, the interneurons, and the brain outputs. So the brain outputs are hormones and behavior. RGN is a hormonal output. Behavior is, of course, motor control, other types of behaviors. So that's basically the idea. And then you have these, this is kind of the model that I showed in the video. They've done some analysis of the different types of neurons and their frequency in the brain. You have these homologous pairs of things because you have a left-right laterality. They're showing that example. And then you can break this connectome down into different parts. So you have the brain inputs, the neurons and the connections. You have these, you can analyze them as sensory connections versus ascending connections, though these are inputs to the brain. You have interneurons, which are these places where things come together, and you have different types of interneurons in different locations. And then you have the brain outputs. So these are outputs to hormones and behavior. You see there are many more behavioral outputs than hormonal outputs. Then you have, so this is the map of the brain outputs. So you can break this connectome down in different ways. So then they've identified these cells, have identified some of the types, they've categorized what it does. And then this kind of shows more about this analysis of the brain. You have the axon to dendrite. So, we talked about this where you have the neurons, a pair of neurons here that have axons that go out, make connections at the synapses, and then that information is summed upstream of the neuron in the dendrite and then comes into this other neuron. So this is the complexity of this connection. We talk about like neural networks, and we have these two units, and they're connected by a connection, and we give it a weight. In this case, you can see that there's a huge amount of complexity here in many different ways. You can have axon to axon connections, axon to dendrite connections, dendrite to dendrite connections, and dendrite to axon connections. Those are all possible. This is a standard thing where you have a downstream to upstream neuron, but you can actually have, axonal connections and so forth. And these are actually important in neuromodulation, so modulating what neurons are doing. So it's not just a simple activate to activate relationship. You have these sort of neuromodulatory relationships. And keep in mind that, neurons aren't just pairwise. You have a lot of neurons maybe coming into a single neuron, and there are a lot of interactions here. So they build a network, they build a sort of an adjacency matrix, and from there you can calculate a lot of these relationships in the connectome. So that's the paper this is the paper where they lay out the full connectome. Now, there are two other papers that came before this. The first one was from 2017, so this was several years ago. And this paper is sort of where they did part of this connectome. So they were able to get the complete connectome of a learning and memory center. And so this was at the time, really big deal because they hadn't had any characterization of the connectome. And a lot of the same authors are on this paper. So they did this, they were able to reconstruct one circuit at synaptic resolution in the larval mushroom body. We find that most Kenyan cells, which is a specific type of cell, multisensory cell, I believe, in the insect connectome, integrate random combinations of inputs, but that a subset receives stereotyped inputs from single projection neurons. So this speaks to this idea of hubs and this idea of information processing that happens through a lot of interactions and a lot of modulation of these connections. So they're not just like one-to-one connections. They're not linear at all. There are different ways that they get connected in, and things get summed up. And we've talked about dendritic computing. We've talked about synaptic computing. And this is another aspect of this, but it's the biology now. So this organization maximizes performance of a model output neuron on a stimulus discrimination task. We also report a novel canonical circuit in each mushroom body compartment with previously unidentified connections. So they've actually looked at these mushroom body compartments. They're looking at this novel circuit that they found. They have not found the connections for this previously. So they have this reciprocal Kenyan cell to modulatory neuron connection, modulatory neuron to output neuron connections, and a surprisingly high number of recurrent connections between Kenyan cells. So it's a circuit that involves these Kenyan cells and other supporting neurons that connect. They modulate the connections between Kenyan cells and from other places in the brain, or to other places in the organism. So this is all, this is a very, it's a complex system. This was where this was first characterized. They were able to build this map of the circuit, and now, of course, they have the full connectome. So this was the circuit that they defined in 2017. This is the unknown territory, which is now known from our new article, and this is there's a lot of progress that they've made on this. So this just shows, olfactory inputs, which are very important in Drosophila. They have to smell fruit and distinguish between different types of fruit. That's where they live, in the world of fruit. And this is, the way that this is in, the olfactory inputs get connected into the mushroom body. So this is the circuit that they worked on. Then this paper here in eLife, this is from 2021, and this is actually, I think, a different group. But they talk about a connectome of the Drosophila central complex reveals network motifs suitable for flexible navigation and context-dependent action selection. So this is part of the connectome in the central complex, which is a different part, not the mushroom bodies, but a different part of the insect brain. This is where they're looking at behavior, and they're looking at network motifs in that connectome. So this is very important for sensory motor coordination in the fruit fly. This is why, it can see like things in, looming cues in the environment, like a fly swatter coming to hit it, and it can move quickly out of the way. And it does this through these kind of motifs, or these network motifs that allow for navigation and action selection. If there's a threat or if there's something in the environment it wants to move towards, it can do so. So the abstract here reads, flexible behaviors over long time scales are thought to engage recurrent neural networks in deep brain regions, which are experimentally challenging to study. So you can see with the reconstruction of the connectome that it's hard to know what that network looks like. In insects, recurrent circuit dynamics in a brain region called the central complex enables directed locomotion, sleep, context and experience dependent spatial navigation. So it's locomotion, spatial navigation, and sleep, which are related things in mammalian brains, but even more so in insect brains. This is all one circuit. It's a central complex. We described the first complete electron microscopy-based connectome of Drosophila CX. So this is a different part of the connectome that was defined before this whole connectome. This was done using electron microscopy, so it's very high resolution, but it doesn't have a lot of the sort of information, functional information, that we might get out of something like some of the other methods that we use for that are fluorescent based. So this has all of its neurons and circuits at synaptic resolution. We identified new CX neuron types, novel sensory motor pathways, and network motifs that are likely to enable CX to extract the fly's head direction. So the head direction is important in orienting in space, maintaining it with attractor dynamics. So they use some dynamical systems here and combine it with other sensory motor information to perform vector-based navigational computations. So we've not talked about spatial cognition and path integration in insects, but that's something that insects do to find their way home, to a home base, or to find their way through the environment. And so it involves head orientations, ballistic movements, and registering their sensory inputs, which are olfactory and visual, and sometimes vibratory, with the environment and sort of the location of things in the environment. So this is an important part of their survival. We identify numerous pathways that may facilitate the selection of CX-driven behavioral patterns by context and internal state. This connectome provides a comprehensive blueprint necessary for understanding the network dynamics of these different behavioral states. So this is the paper. This is the connectome that they have. This is their anterior view, their hemibrain volume. This is the central complex here with respect to the mushroom bodies. And you can see, I don't know where they show the central complex in some of these. Oh, here it is. So the central complex is here, sort of in between the mushroom bodies. This is, wait a minute, ME is the medulla. This is the hemibrain volume. So they show this in context. CZ is the subesophageal ganglion zone. So my anatomical pronunciation is failing me here, but then in any case, you can see where the central complex is with respect to the rest of the brain. So if we go back to that image of the connectome, it's kind of right in the middle of everything in the top. So yeah, this just kind of shows this here. This shows kind of the systems sketch of some of these things. So you have motion cues and optic flow, which lead to self-motion signals. Motor commands this goes to navigational computations, action selection during sleep-wake cycles, and then motor commands sent to self-motion signals, which are verified through head direction. You have circadian signals, internal drives, which also influence head direction, and then stimulus selection from visual signals, which influence head direction. So you have all these things interacting. And then this is a map here of the three different views of connected neurons through these axons and synaptic connections at the intersections of the different axons. So you can see how complex this is in different areas. So that's all I wanted to talk about today. Looks like, okay, Jesse, all right. Oh, yeah. So this is, Amanda said, I also live in the world of fruit. That's great. And then Jesse says, I bet you do. And so Jesse wants to remind everyone to reach out to him on Slack for things. And if you have questions about Notion or about GSoC. There's Jesse's fruit of the loom meme here, or fruit meme. Yeah. So anything we wanted to say before we go?
Can we talk about the Levin paper next time?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's like a whole. We released like three preprints at once, man.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
So there's a lot there, and I didn't get a chance to dig into it, but I'm very excited too. So I'd love to talk about it next time. It also seems like the kind of thing where if we can all prepare a little bit, it would be a better conversation because it's really going on.
Yes, great. Let's have a prepared discussion, and maybe we can like dovetail a tiny bit, like just a bit at like the Cognition Futures meeting too. But I would like have a real big discussion with everybody, like especially Morgan or Ankit or Hussein or whoever else. Like let's have a nice discussion of that next week. I would like to do that if we have time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun. Okay. Good call. I'm going to go now, though, but it's great to talk to everybody.
Well, nice to see everyone, and have a good week, and catch up on Slack.
Take
Yeah,
care.
I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
See you.